Hello, I'm Veronique Mandel. Welcome to The Right Stuff. This is a show about writers who have a connection to Windsor and Essex County and Kent County. Writers and authors of all genres, mature writers and young writers. In addition to those writers, we'll be talking with publishers and bookstore owners and book reviewers. We plan to have a lot of fun with some very interesting people, and we hope you'll join us to enjoy them as much as we will. Sometimes we'll take our show out to where you are, and sometimes we'll invite you to join us here in the studio. So stay tuned. Our first show tonight, we have a newly published author and two authors who have published one book and have a manuscript completed for a second. Now, my very first guest on The Right Stuff is Jennifer Amascotto, and I have her book here. It's called Dear Internet, It's Me, Avery. Welcome, Jennifer. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Veronique. I'm so happy to be here.
I want to talk about this book. It was such a lot of fun, but I'd like to know a little bit more about Jennifer.
Sure.
Are you from Windsor? Did you grow up here?
Yes, I grew up here. I've lived here most of my life. I work at the University of Windsor in public affairs, and I have a lot of family here.
And you stayed here all your life so far?
Gone away for a little while, lived in Sarnia for a little bit, year and a half or so, and then returned. I missed the area. There was something about it. I was happy to come back.
When did you start writing Dear Internet?
I started writing it about 4 years ago. I wanted to buy an iPad and I wanted to have an excuse to buy it. So I thought, I'm going to write a book on it. And I thought, I'll bring it with me everywhere and I'll just jot things down as I think of them. So that was my excuse to buy the iPad. And then I wrote one chapter. And then I put it away for about a year. And I went back to it over time and took hits at it here and there, finally got a first draft together, and it took about 3 years total.
Going back, is this, looking at your early years, high school years, did you start writing then? I mean, was this your first foray into writing?
Well, I always liked writing. I wrote plays when I was a child, and we used to put on puppet shows at the library in South Windsor. I liked writing poetry. I have always enjoyed writing, but this was the very first time that I thought I would try to write an entire book. It was always a daunting idea, and I didn't know if I could do it, and I just wanted to prove to myself that I could write a whole book, come up with a whole story, beginning to end, and put it all down, and that was the goal.
How did you come up with the title?
I came up with the title, I was on the treadmill and it came to me, and I ran upstairs and I wrote it down. The whole basis of the book is one woman's obsession with using the internet, a chat site, help site called howto.com, to figure out her daily life, the little problems, the big problems. And I was toying with the idea of using the howto.com name in the title, but it just didn't quite fit for me. And then it just came to me, the Dear Internet. I mean, it's a little bit of a takeoff on, Dear God, it's me, Margaret,
yeah.
Or, Dear Vodka, it's me, Chelsea. It's the idea of turning to something, sort of a childlike belief in something. That's what I wanted to capture, and for me, that just hit it.
We'll talk a bit more about the story, but why Avery?
The name Avery? The name Avery actually has a little bit of a background to it. I started off calling her something entirely different, but I needed a name. I actually had to change her name partway through the book, because I needed a name that could be interpreted as male or female. And so I went back, and Avery is always a name that I liked, actually. And I chose that. I had originally, I think, called her Phoebe or something like that. And I had to change it, and I thought it worked.
It's me, Phoebe. It doesn't have the same ring, does it?
No, it all worked out, but that was why I had to go back and change the name about a third of the way into the book.
There's a lot of, the book's very humorous. Do you have a sense of humor?
I'd like to think so. I had a lot of fun writing it. I really worked hard to find my voice. And I have a very close friend who inspired me to write. She encouraged me to write. She goaded me to write. And I used to run things by her. I would write a few chapters and then I would read them to her. We'd sit at Tim Hortons, and if she laughed so hard that I thought she was going to have an accident, then I thought I was on the right track. And so once you get that positive reaction, it sort of feeds you, and you think, well, I must be doing something right, and you really work hard to try and capture that in what you're doing. It's sort of like when a comedian, goes up in front of an audience. I'm beginning to understand that idea of you feed off of their reaction, and I had a lot of fun doing that.
There's an author called Janet Ivanovich. Mm-hmm. Every time I read her books, if I read them in bed, the bed's shaking because I laugh so much. This has a very similar feel to it in that there's an underlying humor, but the person is a really funny person.
That's good. I mean, I've had people remark that to me, that they've been reading the book in bed and their husband will say to them, "Why are you laughing? What are you laughing at?" And actually a few of the reviews on Amazon have referenced the idea that, if you read this and you're on public transportation, people are going to look at you. And actually a coworker, she said she was reading the book on the bus on the way to work and on the way home, and people were looking at her. So I thought, that is perfect. That's what I want. I mean, that's part of the reason I wrote the book, was to make people laugh. And it makes me very happy to hear that.
Did you find the humor in yourself? I mean, was it difficult? I mean, humor is a really difficult thing to write.
Well, it's funny because I never really thought of myself like that. I grew up very shy, as I like to say. I used to walk to school with my head down, very, very shy child. And
you wouldn't know it from this book.
And just over time, I sort of began to realize that I had a bit of skill in entertaining people and making them laugh. And once I began to get that positive feedback and that reinforcement, it really encouraged me. And it's something there. And the more I talk to my parents, the more I realize they're pretty funny too. So, I mean, maybe there's something there. It's genetic. It's something in the family, maybe.
Did you let them read the book before it was published?
My mother read the book. My father is not allowed to. There are words in there that he doesn't want to see, and some references to other things he doesn't want to know. And my mother, she enjoyed the book, but she would have preferred there was a little bit less cursing. And the version she read, there was actually a little bit more. I did scale it back a little tiny bit. She likes book 2. I've already written book 2, actually, and she liked that one better because there was a little bit less of the profanity.
When you're writing a book like this, and we're going to take a break shortly, and we'll come back and talk more about what's in it. There's always the temptation when there's sex in it to sex it up, aka Mr. Gray and his 50 Shades, because it sells. Were you ever tempted to go further than?
No, sex is not. It's not the driving part of this book. It's a peripheral interest in it, but it's not. This isn't. This is just not that sort of book. This book is meant to be humorous. It's meant to be somewhat more chick lit, rom-com. It's not meant to be erotica. It's not meant to be a 50 Shades of Grey knockoff. It's just. I'm not comfortable writing that. I think that it takes a certain skill, and I think there's a lot of books out there that have tried, and it can be very awkward if you do it wrong, and I don't think it's my strength to write that. I think my strength is more along the lines of humor, and I can, humor in the bedroom, awesome. I mean, there's a place for that, but I mean, it's certainly there to some extent. This is a woman who's going out to the world after, divorce, whatever, and she's going to come face to face with sex after divorce, but it's just not a big part of the book.
Yeah, and as you say, if you get it wrong, it's really bad.
Yeah, it's cringeworthy when it's wrong.
Well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk about some of the things on the pages I've flagged. We'll be right back.